hi there, ho there everybody, welcome back. Today's video is going to cover 3 different topics on building a Minecraft tavern. First, we're going to talk a little bit about detailing tips, some things you can put into the buildings. Then we're going to talk about the structural components of a building. What makes the interior of a building look solid and give it depth? And lastly, we're going to talk about some different elements that you can incorporate into your build to really work on improving it. Without further ado, let's get started. Now, we're going to talk about these 3 things simultaneously because they kind of go together. And the first thing I want to talk about is the entrance. The entrance of a guild hall or a tavern should always be grand because in most towns and villages, the tavern or the gathering hall was the most prominent building. And the big thing here is the layering. You see we have this archway coming across here. We have an inner layer coming in here following the same pattern as this. This is actually the actual wall of the building. And then we have this inner layer, the inside layer. And that's another archway that follows the same as the arch we have here. And it's a nice view when you're walking out and also when you're walking in. We created the same technique on the outside. We have the outer arch here, which is the support for the building. We have the middle layer, which again is the wall. And we have this inner layer, which is another arch that again follows the same way as the outer arch. While we're out here, I'd also like to mention the lighting. You see we have this set of lighting here, and then we have this set of lighting on the side. And the side lighting is set back a block, and it's also lower. And what this does is it gives a forced perspective of the building. It kind of creates a nice border on the outside, and it creates a nice, more open but still a border on the top, and it draws your attention inward. We have a similar thing over here, except it's the opposite. Again, we have our forced perspective, but we have the higher lights in the back and our lower lights in the front. And what this does is it pulls your eye to the roof. And it makes the roof seem bigger than it actually is, which is great because, again, we want to have a nice, big, majestic tavern. And when you can use building tips like this, you can make your roof look bigger without actually building it bigger. It saves you a lot of time. Another thing we have here is windows. So the combination of the lanterns and windows is what provides the lighting for inside here. We have windows there, there, and of course the sides over here. I used half slabs and stairs over here on the top, and as a thinner detail, I used trapdoors. Moving right along to the tables and chairs, these are designs that have been around for a while, but I see so many people do, I don't even know how many variations of this chair. They'll use half slabs, they'll use stairs, they'll use trapdoors on the back. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it, but this is the way I like the best because it looks very clean and it looks realistic, like a chair. You have a nice thin armrest, the back rest is pretty tall, and you have a nice flat seat to sit on. Another thing I see people do with the table here is the original design is a 3x3 table, and that's what most people use. But the design is actually expandable. You can make it a 3x4, you can even make it a 3x, I don't even know how many that is. You can even make it a 6x12 if you wanted to. It's really expandable using the same technique. You can even put supports underneath like I did here. And some people use carpet for the tops of tables, which is what we had to do before we had nice trapdoors. But the trapdoors look much better, especially if you're already using carpet in your build for, well, carpet. Another detail that's really nice now that we have barrels, putting barrels in the build, looks a lot better than putting chests. And you just put a couple of custom heads down, some lanterns. We have a couple of custom heads here, and it just fills the space and it feels natural. Kind of looks like there's supplies coming in to have a big feast or something. All right, another thing I'll show you here for a little bit of detailing is this bookcase area here. I wasn't quite sure what to do with this area, and I decided to put a little pop of color in here. So as you can see, all it is bookcases and the wall, they're flush, but it's the trap doors that give it a little bit of depth, and it separates the two layers. And then to fill this space up here, we just put a lantern. And it can be like a nice reading area, and it gives a nice little variation instead of just having a flat wall. All right, coming down here, what I did is I put the blocks a step, 2 steps down, rather a step and a half, 2 steps from here. And that gives the build a little bit of depth. If you have just a flat layout to a house, it can look nice if you detail it well, but adding that little extra step down really makes it feel like you're on another level of the house, which is nice. And then we have a stage here. Again, we have the layering like we did with the opening here, and we have the layer of the kind of like the accent piece here. Then we have the main wall, and then we have this piece behind it. And this right here is like a little stage. You'd be having performers and, you know, people playing lutes or guitars. You'd have a little tip jar there. And, yeah, put some little tables there for standing space. People can set their drinks down and watch the show. And you also have some serving areas over here for casks or like drink dispensers. I just use tripwire hook and barrel. That looks nice. Also, to light up these areas, just put a little bit of glowstone under some carpet, hide the light, it goes there. Another little accent is using some trap doors. So you see I put that around here. I also put trap doors around the pillars. And then we also use them up here on the kind of banister, the balcony guardrail. Instead of just using fence posts and fence gates, it adds a nice variation. All right. Now, while we're talking about these posts here, let's talk about structure. So one of the things that I knew I wanted to do is I wanted to have a second floor in my tavern. So that way you could have the food down here, and then up above you'd have sleeping quarters. This is kind of like an inn/tavern, so it's a little bit of both. And I was thinking on one side you have the bartender and then the innkeeper. But when you have an upper floor, you really want to have supports for it. And it adds nice detail too. So we have these secondary supports kind of jutting out here. Kind of main primary supports. And then we have these posts, these really big and thick supports coming up here. And I have them in all 4 corners of the build. And what that does is it does 2 things. 1, it breaks up the space between the walls. And 2, it makes the build look more natural. Because if you just had a floating platform here for a second level, it wouldn't look like it's real. So I always make sure to add supports. All right. Let's see. Coming up here, again, we have a nice, huge window for light. And it's a nice feature piece. It adds detail to the wall. We also have supports going across here, and this is going to be roof supports. We have a roof support here, and on the other side, and over there. It adds detail and structural purpose. Another great thing here is these columns that support the pillars, and you can add trapdoors to hide lighting inside of them, to really light up your build where there's not really any windows nearby. And on top of that, the trapdoors add a little tiny bit of depth. They add a little lip, so they stick out and they just make the build stand out that much more. Okay, another variation for kind of a lantern, or not a lantern, but a chandelier, is doing kind of like a little nook going up into your ceiling, and then having fence posts come down and hanging lanterns from them. The big thing here is the difference in elevation. When you have them at different levels, it gives a little extra detailing and makes it look more natural, so to say. It gives a little bit of depth to it. All right. Now, I did this here on purpose to show you the difference again between the trapdoors and the some people just put wooden logs here, but I prefer trapdoors when possible if you're just doing a tiny support. And then we come into the bedroom. We have a bed here, a nice little bed post, and one thing I did here, I wanted the bed to have a nice height to it, the bedroom, but I wanted it to feel cozy. And to do that, I put these nice stairs going along it there, and a couple of accent tables. You can put a loom in here, you can put whatever decorations you want. And then you have, of course, the windows for some other natural light. Now, if you wanted to make this build functional, you could have on all four corners of the second level, you could have maybe an enchanting table, have some furnaces over here for smelting. Over in this corner, have maybe some anvils for repair and different things like that. You have a loom, put some fabric up here, some banners, and make it look like you're, spinning a cloth or something. Whatever you guys want to do up here, those are excellent ways to make it functional, but of course it's entirely up to you what you'd like to do. All right, and then lastly we'll talk about some borders here. So you can see along here we have, again, the little bit of depth. It's not flat. We have the fence gates, or fence posts, and we have trap doors. And just that little bit of layering adds a nice touch to this, and it makes a nice border wall, so to say, something like a guardrail, just like that. All right, let's see what else we can find here for you guys. I did put posts over here, but I didn't hang lanterns, again, because we have the natural light. And, right here, another thing. To fill this space, I just put some decoration with half slabs and stairs, but I also used trap doors for just a thin layer of detailing, and that makes it look nice. And there we go. Yes, did a similar thing over here, did some decor, and that adds depth as well. It gives you the back wall layer, and then it has this outer layer here, which gives a nice little layer. And yeah. Alright guys, that's going to do it for me. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you make a tavern and you use some of these tips, let me know. I'd like to see what you guys come up with, because you guys are awesome. Catch you guys later.